Hey guys, tonight we're diving headfirst into the chilly waters of Viking life, a time when hearty laughter and hearty smells went hand in hand. We'll explore what it would be like to spend a night in a Viking Longhouse, where the ambience is like a rustic Airbnb that forgot clean was a concept. So before you get cozy, take a moment to hit like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what we do here. Leave a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from. I love to see which distant corners of the world are braving my storytelling. Now, dim the lights, turn on a fan for that gentle whooshing sound, and settle in. Is your blanket adequately heavy enough to double as a life vest? Let's ponder for a moment. Ever thought about how Vikings actually slept? Did they have pillows made of feathers or just a sack of grain? What was their bedtime routine? Did they sing lullabies, or did they just grunt and hope for the best? Oh, and what about personal hygiene? Spoiler alert, temperamental at best. Now, congratulations. You've just woken up in a Viking Longhouse. The year is 793 AD. You're sharing a bed with half a goat and nightmares are the least of your worries. As you squint in the dim candlelight, you begin to understand that the true spirit of home vastly differs from what modern realtors might market. Welcome to a Viking Longhouse. Picture a cosy space that smells faintly of sweat, smoke, and maybe even last week's stew that went rogue on the floor. It's basically a DIY project bursting at the seams. A longhouse isn't just a residence. It's a lively affair with enough communal intimacy to frighten anyone who values their personal space. There's a distinct chance that your bedmate, who you've just met, is a goat with a spunky personality. Lucky you! The Longhouse is not just home to your family, but also to a wonderfully diverse bunch of livestock. The very essence of a Viking home can be summed up in 3 vital scents: wet wool soaked in mystery, slightly charred meat, and that single, unidentifiable thing that's been crawling under the floor for years. As you navigate past the communal sleeping area, where every blanket is in a constant state of debate with the floor, you hear the soft snoring of your neighbour, who, judging by the echo, may actually be a walrus. Now, let's talk about how the Viking Longhouse is organised, which is akin to a grandma's attic if she also hoarded dreams of raiding remote coastal villages. You'll discover there are no bathrooms, but you'll find wooden buckets gleefully stationed in the corners, because why not combine human and goat droppings into one communal experience? It's this kind of resourcefulness that defines Viking architecture. Imagine the charm. The decor might be simple, but remember, it's functional. Everything has a purpose. The rough-hewn benches aren't just for seating, they double as beds, storage units, and if you're really fortunate, a drafting board for a future Viking saga involving fire-breathing moose and heroic lunchtime battles. The centrepiece is the hearth, where the fire burns bright, cooking meats, illuminating the faces of despair, and also providing enough smoke to fill a lesser establishment with dread. But here, it feels right at home. As you settle in, embrace your fate alongside a tapestry of history in the making. The walls are adorned with the occasional piece of woolly artwork portraying elaborate hunting escapades or epic clashes with forces of nature and neighbouring tribes, all while keeping in mind the terrifyingly short attention spans of everyone involved. Picture this. A Viking's proud representation of their strength is often depicted in crude yet powerful strokes, with birds and beasts battling for glory in an art style that remains unique to the time. It's less Mona Lisa and more wild beasts of chaos. In such a setting, mealtime is quite the spectacle. Dinners are typically boisterous and chaotic affairs, with ravenous appetites countered only by the ever-festive atmosphere. The grand feast often starts with the ceremonial invocation of ale, because hydration is key, but so are social lubricants. While hearty stews bubble away in a pot that probably doesn't want to talk about its past, you'll find little morsels of fermented fish being passed around with the same fervour, usually reserved for family secrets. Spoiler alert, you will probably end up with both the stew and its secrets if you're not careful. Yet, it's not all revelry. There's a slight underlying tension. Your host has just caught a favouring whiff of impeccable sweat mixed with despair and despairing olfactory evidence. It may start as mere grunts about the state of the fishing nets, but give it a moment and you can bet it will escalate into a full headlock wrestling match, complete with an audience of sheep and blunt comments from the goat cohort. As the evening wears on, the Longhouse transforms from a humble home into a cauldron of laughter, rowdiness, and sporadic philosophical debates about farming versus raiding. A favourite topic? Why take the fish from the sea when you can simply steal it from your neighbour? As every fellow Viking shimmering in the flickering light joins in, you'll come to realise that harmony is achieved not through agreement, but in a shared commitment to enjoying life one bad pun at a time. So, there you are, enveloped in the heart of Viking life, pondering the wisdom behind whether life as a raider is better than life as a farmer, half hoping the cow doesn't mind the positive vibes of the pending discussions. And remember, exhaustion will claim you before frostbite does, so settle in. As the night winds down, you drift off dreaming of moose raids, one-eyed gods, and other things you hope won't join you in bed. The moment you step inside, a gust of wind hits you, reminding you that insulation is not a Viking strong suit. They didn't have double-glazed windows. Instead, they had an uncanny ability to simply endure the cold, along with a few dozen family members and livestock who are generously providing both warmth and the unique scent of despair. The Longhouse, a wondrous architectural marvel of wooden beams and thatch, is less a home and more of a giant aromatic tin can. You can practically hear the walls groan as they fashionably sag under the weight of all that shared misery. This close-knit arrangement somehow creates an atmosphere of camaraderie, or maybe shared madness. It's hard to tell when the chickens are clucking in agreement. As you enter, the first thing that assaults your senses is the delightful melange of smells, a persuasive potion of damp earth, unshowered bodies, and very questionable mutton stew bubbling over an open fire. Ah yes, the Viking Longhouse, a historical IKEA with absolutely no return policy on the lingering odours. You wander further in, attempting to navigate through a soft carpet of straw mixed with, well, let's just say the livestock contributes more than just warmth. This isn't just a home, it's practically a petting zoo with a trophy for Most Fragrant Family award. And don't think about personal space. There's no room for that here when it feels like you're part of a puzzling human puzzle. Now, speaking of livestock, there's a goat directly in your line of sight. Partly curious, partly suspicious. You can't help but wonder if it's judging you or preparing to join the family for dinner. And while most people would find the idea of sharing a space with a goat a bit odd, in Viking culture, it's practically tradition. So, if you happen to wake up tomorrow with goat breath wafting in your face, remember to thank your hosts for the delightful morning freshness. Once you've settled into your designated spot, you notice that everyone's dressed like they just raided a fabric store helmed by a particularly enthusiastic 7-year-old. Viking fashion combines layers of wool and leather that provide warmth and, let's be honest, revolutionise the definition of comfortable. As you see the women and men donning their battle gear of tunics, skirts and trousers, you wonder if anything exists in the realm of clean. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. The only laundry day the Norse honour involves shaking out the furs and lamenting the smell, while cursing the one who dared to boil within a few feet of the cooking fire. With the evening wearing on, the warmth of the shared body heat becomes oppressive. Yet, you can't ignore those overlapping layers of chaos as family disputes intermingle with livestock squabbles in a way that could only be described as a sitcom pilot gone horribly wrong. The dad jokes fly as easily as the half-rotten meat, while the children listen with wide eyes, likely already planning their escape routes to a more fragrant neighbour's home. You can practically feel the energy of bedtime stories mixing with the pungent aroma. Something tells you the traditional tale of bravery with trolls will be highly altered, with the adventures of the goat munching on a well-placed tunic. As the hour grows late, the sounds of laughter and bucolic harmony morph into a chorus of snores and rumbles, creating a lullaby of sort amidst the animal sounds. The nightly rulers of the infamous Viking Longhouse have claimed their respective territories on the shared furs. Watch out, because even the youngest can become surprisingly territorial when it's bedtime. You never thought you'd engage in an unseemly wrestling match with a toddler over bed space. But here you are, pretending to be docile while keeping a keen ear on the goat's whereabouts, because that goat has plans of its own. Eventually, sleep begins to seep into your bones, mixed with the echoing sense of yesterday's dinner and the questionable bodily odours of your roomies. As you lie there, nestled among the families, and possibly a few curious chickens, you can't help but laugh to yourself. This has become less an exercise in survival and more an absurd epic saga that transcends anything Netflix has to offer. And who knows, by sunrise, a new adventure awaits. Because that's the Viking way. Live loud, sleep tight, and always keep one eye open for errant livestock or the occasional existential crisis triggered by mutton stew. When you hear the Vikings cry welcome, what they really mean is, prepare to be hit with a week-old fish stew and a front-row seat to the aroma of our communal hygiene, or lack thereof. Sit down, offer your thanks, and try not to make too much eye contact. Those stares may linger a little too long after last night's drinking contest. As the appetising smell, akin to desperation and last night's bad decisions, fills your nostrils, you might reconsider that fourth cup of mead you so generously indulged in, under the impression it would make the company more bearable. Little did you know that bearable was not on the menu for the evening. The Longhouse is a whirlwind of sociability, where laughter and burps mix in a raucous blend more potent than the mead itself. You realise that everyone here is one hearty belly laugh away from a state you can only describe as stewed. This is the Viking way of life, close quarters and close camaraderie. Though it's amazing how little personal space can be a bonding experience, albeit one that constantly tests the limits of your olfactory tolerance. Ever tried to share a meal with someone who clearly hasn't brushed their teeth since the last Viking raid? It's an experience that transforms the thought of dinner into more of a medieval endurance challenge. As you awkwardly slosh your stew around the bowl, glancing sideways at your new friends, you begin to contemplate the great social dynamics at play. Outside the Longhouse, a chill sweeps through the evening air, demanding everyone inside just a bit tighter together for warmth. You quietly ponder if the close-knit situation is a tactic to foster community spirit, or just an instinct for survival against the winter chill. It's likely a bit of both, mixed with a touch of who will be the next brave soul to hurl themselves through the door to relieve themselves behind the nearest birch tree, attempting to claim no one will notice. Conversation flows as freely as the mead, punctuated by hearty laughter that echoes like thunder as you're roped into an impromptu tale of the most audacious fishing expedition in Viking history. To your surprise, several members claim to have single-handedly landed a whale, wrestled it up onto the beach, and then proceeded to cook it like it was your average Sunday roast. Whether half of these stories hold any grain of truth is questionable, but what you're really discovering is how storytelling is woven into the very fabric of their existence. Forget Wikipedia. This is how legends are passed on. over a fire amid strong drink and exaggerated acts of valour. Lest you forget, the obligatory feasting toast is never far from the forefront of the revelry. Skål, they cry, raising their mugs in unison, splintering an echo that reverberates through your very soul. This is now a social contract you recognise as you reluctantly lift your own mug, albeit with an overzealous hint of hesitation. Each gulp down your throat feels like it requires a battle strategy, as you cling to the thought that it's better to enjoy the moment rather than contemplate how deep into the bottom of the barrel this brew may have come from. The warmth of community envelops you, albeit interspersed with a dappled odour reminiscent of wet dog and questionable hygiene. Ah, yes, you muse to yourself, this is the true Viking experience. Living history with a side order of potential dysentery. And then it hits you. You made contact with the family goat earlier, and now here you sit wondering if goat hug is officially on the list of personal hygiene violations. It could be worse, an intimate encounter with the chicken. As nighttime descends deep into comfortable chaos, new arrivals shuffle in, crash the equal opportunity storytelling, and get themselves a round of mead. You've made the rookie mistake of believing the night had a timeline. Here, time is a mere suggestion strutting alongside the constant distraction of how many barrels of ale are left in the corner. A drunken brawl erupts a little too close to you, and the laughter definitely turns a tad louder when someone falls sideways. Because what's a Viking gathering without a little chaos, right? So as the night drags on, with fresh anecdotes piling up next to the half-empty stew pot, it becomes abundantly clear. Viking hospitality means warmth without restraint, laughter laced with odours you'll fondly remember for years to come, and tales that will inevitably transform into family legends you never asked to take part in. Welcome to Viking life, indeed. Ah, cooking. Or, more accurately, the fine art of hurling whatever you've managed to scavenge into a boiling pot. The smell wafting through the Longhouse is a mix of what can only be described as umami and regret, producing culinary masterpieces like mystery meat and root vegetable surprise. Don't ask what surprise entails. The kitchen, a designated cooking area that doubles as a fire hazard, resembles a war zone. Flour dust in the air mixes with the dismay of your fellow Longhouse dwellers, who are trying to keep their high hopes for dinner alive while navigating between dangling pots and suspicious aromas. The Viking cooking style seems straightforward. Toss something in a pot over a fire and hope that nothing crawls out before it's served. Your culinary skills may consist of peering into pots and muttering about the vague nature of life while stirring what appears to be a stew that might need a few more days to ferment. The primary question you ponder isn't whether it will taste good, it's whether it should even be considered food. For most, the notion of culinary finesse leaves much to be desired. Your fellow Vikings expertly slice root veggies while clutching a tankard of ale, with an alarming level of confidence. That's because, in the Viking world, confidence is key, and no one wants to admit they mistook a rotten turnip for a savoury carrot during a late-night raid. Finish any meal, and you prepare for the legendary dishes to come, suspected treasures of leftover stew. You wonder if this concoction will require a structural inspection thanks to the distinct odour that kicks in when the lid is removed. Everything gets thrown in. Dried fish, last week's boiled tubers, possibly some of those herbs you found while trying to outrun rabid chickens. Richard, a burly, over-enthusiastic warrior who claims to know his way around a fire, insists on adding herbs, most of whom you strongly suspect got snagged without permission from the lady of the nearby hovel. "It's for flavour," he roars, oblivious to the fact that last year's hiccup of herb stealing nearly led to a full-on family feud. You can only hope this batch of soup won't turn out like Richard's last masterpiece. The one that caused 3 men to mysteriously lose their lunch all over the communal floor. Remember, Viking meals rarely befit the name fine dining. While fancy recipes involve duck à l'orange and perfect soufflés, your expectations are simple. Survive the meal without contracting a mild case of food poisoning. So who needs a Michelin star when you've got the handiness of wooden spoons, weathered clay bowls, and the sheer will to eat whatever happens to be on hand? As you stare into the bubbling pot, it's not just stew, it's a test of your ability to brave the unknown, like a daring culinary archaeologist unearthing Viking history, one suspicious bite at a time, and of course, the spark of joy that emerges upon discovering a rare treat like freshwater fish. It's on. Dinner entertainment quickly escalates as people engage in heated discussions on cooking methods, while vigorously debating whose stew from yesterday would have made Thor shed a tear or run away in terror. You practically cheer for the outcome of these nightly deliberations. Extreme delight when a meal is edible, and a sense of resignation that simmers over when the idea of last week's mix turns into growing back. Now, in true Viking style, post-feast revelry is essential. Raise a toast. That means you're now celebrating not only survival but also last night's flavours. As horns of mead overflow, everyone seems to harbour deep opinions on soup textures, and who knew that using turnip greens could spark a full-blown argument about maligned veggie tactics? One thing's for certain, cooking may not be a fine art, but an understated reflection on your resilience. And amidst the laughter and jest, don't forget that you're all gathered for one main objective: to make it through another day while basking in the camaraderie of a shared meal that binds you all together, even if it's held together by questionable choices. So grab your drinking horn and strap in for subsequent Viking meals, rich in imagination, friendship, and a selective approach to culinary delights that might just be best labelled "do not ask." Certain kitchen skills may evolve with stories to share, and who knows, tomorrow might just be fish day, a day that brings hope or a little bit of scaly despair. When they say bed, they're actually referring to a pile of furs that could house an entire Arctic village. As you sink into this dubious comfort, you realise it's a toss-up between warmth and a potential encounter with the microbes of 1,000 former inhabitants. Good luck. You might find yourself asking, is this a bed or a petri dish? As you try to discern which fur is merely an old sheep, and which is something that may have once been alive, or at least had a dream of being alive. It's comforting enough for an instant, like a hug from a woolly mammoth, but your mind quickly drifts back to thoughts of, well, anything but where you just lay your head. The strategic placement of family members is an art form in itself. Space is a luxury, as abundant as the ale at your last meal, so you're nestled right between Uncle Eric, who snores like a dying walrus, and a sheep that clearly took its last bath in the ocean. Every exhale from Eric vibrates through your ribcage, and you can practically feel the woolly warmth of the sheep's body invading your personal space. You might wonder which arrangement might prompt you to leave the Longhouse altogether, the vocal harmonies of Uncle Eric or the pungent aroma of sheep dew, or perhaps the conceptual madness of both. Spoiler alert, this is your bedfellow ensemble, and the title of family bonding has never felt so literal. Now, if you're thinking about clever techniques for drifting off into slumber, you can wave goodbye to sweet dreams. The ambiance consists of drunken ramblings echoing through the air like a poorly orchestrated Viking symphony. Every bellowed laugh and unfiltered comment is accompanied by the rhythmic sounds of animals grazing, an orchestra of snorts, and the occasional cheery bleat of "I'm definitely your pillow tonight." Your roommates have an uncanny talent for transforming sleep into a group affair, complete with 2 close-for-comfort grazing sessions of both the animal and family varieties. As night deepens, the question of personal space becomes even more pressing. You might squint into the blanket of darkness, filled with thoughts about which slightly crushed body part might revolt against you in the morning. Thankfully, Viking hygiene standards afford you very few social graces. If you accidentally elbow Aunt Berta in your sleep, consider it a mere quirk of family bonding, not an offence worthy of exile. And besides, one yearns for Instagram captions that scream living life on the edge, with a stunning backdrop of wool and bickering relatives, right? Once the atmosphere becomes somewhat calm, you'd think that your newfound comrades would return to their gentle slumber. However, you'd be mistaken. Enter the nightly ritual of indoor retellings of legends, where the true giants of the past come alive in tales of valour, and questionable weaponry. Your ears perk up as the tale of the guy who faced a bear and lived to regret. It unfolds, peppered with details that sound suspiciously exaggerated and possibly derived from Uncle Eric's last excursion to the mead hall. But wait, did you hear that? The next instalment of Viking legend continues as someone drags a bag of bones across your bed. Those aren't props for storytelling, they're the remains of last week's leftovers. Welcome to the dinner table that doubles as a museum of questionable culinary decisions. Now, imagine trying to doze off while a game of Who's Up for Sharing Larry's Old Leg Bone comes to life next to you, when suddenly the sheep leaps into your face in a brave act of deciding to sleep and trampling your dreams of peaceful rest. Finally, just as you begin to drift off, one of your bedmates lets out an enthusiastic, to put it lightly, eruption. Yes, it's a delightful ambient chorus of grunts and groans, a sound that could serve as a horror movie soundtrack. But you're ready to dive into the vast wash of sleep, a tempting invite to cozy oblivion, until you're in perpetual doubt about whether to stay or flee. In a place where good night and goodbye are synonymous, you'll calmly realise the absurdity of this Viking slumber party. So, roll over your plush bedding contraption. Pray Uncle Eric doesn't revoke your honorary bed title, and brace yourself for another day of adventure, discomfort and comedy encapsulating the life of a Viking in a longhouse. After all, one must remember that your battle against sleep deprivation is just another epic saga in the grand tapestry of Viking life. You might find yourself asking, where is the restroom? Spoiler alert, you're in it, because privacy is about as scarce as mints at a Viking banquet. The closest thing to a toilet is a bucket in the corner, where discretion and dignity have taken a long vacation. Don't forget to cover your nose. As you brace yourself for this medieval luxury, it dawns on you that the toilet habits of Vikings are profoundly far removed from today's porcelain thrones. Let's face it, most people wouldn't want their worst enemies using this bathroom, let alone risk their own well-being at a venture. When the call of nature strikes, you'll find that this isn't a quiet retreat, but a jarring experience. Nature doesn't exactly agree to wait while you wrestle with your sense of decorum. In fact, it's a public affair, and everyone in the Longhouse probably knows your business before you do. If you hear footsteps approaching, it's up to you to shout, "Watch out below!" A Viking version of the bathroom door knocking that no one ever really gets right. Of course, this isn't a matter of knocking politely. It's closer to a confused game of chicken, with the entire family on constant vigil, making sure everyone is aware of who's currently indisposed. What happens next is as comical as it is grim. You'll grab the closest toilet seat. Let's not kid ourselves. There's nothing close to a seat involved, and start the process. There's no such thing as a quick getaway. It's nearly impossible to concentrate while community gossip wafts around you like a thick cloud, and suddenly your business becomes their business too. The neighbours playfully poke fun at your lack of efficiency from the other side of the room, as if it's a performance piece for their entertainment. Talk about adding pressure. The delightful consequences become apparent when you realise the age-old Viking struggle. The infamous bidet is nowhere to be found. Instead, you've got the option of using discarded straw, leaves, or... is that a sock? Good luck finding a suitable substitute. At this point, elaborating your defense strategy against discomfort and potential disease could warrant a long, strategic meeting, preferably accompanied by a thick layer of ale. And after all the awkward encounters, you dare to dream of washing your hands. Are soap and water magical tools reserved for the elite? Because right now, your hands are drenched in Viking reality. The closest thing to cleanliness involves water taken from a community bucket that's teeming with more than just water's worth of mysteries. Was today's pottage made from yesterday's buttermilk? Who knows? But you've just relinquished any hopes of being a germaphobe in this Viking life. Finally, as you emerge into the bustling longhouse, hands unwashed and a new level of appreciation for modern plumbing gracing your soul, you realise doing your business in the corner is now just the beginning of your day. Everyone gathered around, emitting boisterous laughter and sloshing ale. You try to play it cool and fit back into conversations about valiant sea raids or feasts. You've survived the most intimate act of Viking living, and now you must stand proud. Or at least, semi-proud. The good news? It's all part of the Viking endeavour, a rite of passage into their communal lifestyle. With every awkward moment and hasty giggle, you begin understanding why they persist in chanting victorious tales of combat and war over stews filled with dubious meat. Because it's much easier to laugh about the less than ideal outcomes than admit that every day seems to lead to more chaotic toilet adventures. So as the evening continues, you find a sense of fellowship in understanding that, in the grand tapestry of Viking life, everyone's battling something. It might be bandits attacking, or an ill-timed gust that drags the stench of last night's stew into the longhouse's open air, but rest assured, it's certainly never a dull moment. And as the laughter rolls through yet another animated storytelling session of rollicking past misfortunes, welcome to the realization that while it may not be an ideal life, it's one hell of a journey filled with camaraderie, laughter, and one shared bucket that all make surviving the Viking way worth that tiny little price. After gorging yourself on reindeer stew and a side of mystery meat, it would only be fitting to transition into the inevitable discomfort. Expect an unsightly rash soon, as the Viking way of life might not prioritise your personal grooming habits, let alone skincare routines. That's a luxury reserved for those who have yet to meet the first unfortunate flea. In this delightful longhouse, you've just experienced what could be called a culinary adventure. Your stomach may not feel quite right, and those rashy spots on your arms are the least of your problems. Welcome to the Viking way, where hygiene is written in runes no one can read, and body odour is just another form of social currency. With every moment that passes, the itching strikes with the ferocity of a dragon. You start to suspect that Viking culture may have been built on an unholy alliance with fleas, as they bounce merrily around your body like they own the place. It's like discovering that your new party outfit came complete with a complimentary set of nibbles. You might be wondering whether the Vikings had any concept of flea powder, but rest assured, their version of pest control is merely waving a hand and pretending it's not happening. As you squirm and scratch, consider the living quarters of your neighbours. Picture a longhouse bustling with laughter, but just beneath the surface lies a cacophony of scratching sounds. It's as if everyone around you is rehearsing for an orchestra composed entirely of annoyance. The neighbours' attempts to deal with their own itches result in a variety of comedic contortions, not quite the graceful warriors you imagined, but more like a pack of dancing seals at a rest stop. If you're not careful, your attempts to alleviate the itch could spark a new Viking trend. The public scratching competition. Now, let's stroll down memory lane, specifically your last shower, or lack thereof. I hope you enjoy the aroma of last month's herring stew clinging to your clothes. In Viking culture, a good bath was more of a distant dream than a reality. Remember when you thought you'd luck out with those communal baths? Instead of refreshing, a visit to that seething hot tub of questionable intentions turns out to be more akin to a social experiment, or worse, a bodily survival test. Who knew that bathing meant dunking in a small overcrowded pool that looks suspiciously like your cooking pot? Oh, and how are you faring with your bedmates? You may find yourself in an impromptu snuggle with a goat that has claimed the far corner of your bed, oblivious to your need for personal space. That goat does not care for your boundaries and has definitely made its interest in reeking more than apparent. The goat's heavy breath reminds you that personal hygiene is in the eye of the beholder. If all of that wasn't enough, let's talk about Viking attire. The rugged wool tunic may have seemed comfortable at first, but it's now becoming a skin-chafing phenomenon. You could use expert Viking craftsmanship for clothing that breathes, because right now you're stuck with itchy layers that feel as if they were woven from thistle vines. Somehow, investing in comfy fabric slipped off the priority list like yesterday's fish guts. Instead, it seems the only accessory that matters is an indication of who's caring less about personal grooming. Now, let's explore your post-feast entertainment. Gather round as some Vikings regale you with tales of legendary battles, or more grimly, the personal stories about how they gained their battle scars. Picture yourself half listening to a tale of daring heroism, while simultaneously scratching your own bursitis in the deep subconscious hope that one doesn't acquire an enemy in their own stubble. At the risk of sounding judgmental, a Viking's yarn spinning may not help you forget the mere mortals suffering from hygiene issues. They're almost comically trivial in comparison to the looming itchiness. As the night wears on, you wonder if there's a cure on the horizon. Perhaps a mystical Viking healer holds the key to wellness, or at least a decent blend of goat fat and wild herbs to soothe your afflicted skin. You're left pondering whether you could offer the local itch remedy as a topic of inquiry among the ruckus of beer-induced revelry. Who knew the definition of camaraderie involved so much scratching? In conclusion, rest assured, the Viking experience is one rich with humour, scratching, and the constant reminder that personal hygiene was an optional tradition. Just another delightful evening in the Longhouse, where every bite of reindeer stew comes with a corresponding case of the itches, making bedtime mere folly in the face of your parasitic companions. So, as you squirm into the night, know this: you're embracing the very essence of Viking life, exhausted, itchy, and celebrating with a bunch of merry warriors who confirm you're not alone in nightly discomfort. Good luck! Once the sun sets and the Longhouse fills with shadows, it's time to gather around the fire for storytelling. Here, you'll learn that the Vikings had an epic knack for blending history, mythology, and a good dose of tall tales. Just imagine slaying dragons while trying not to spill your ale. That's the spirit. The crackling fire casts dancing shadows on the walls, illuminating faces flushed with the excitement of the evening. The air thickens with the aroma of phlegm-like stew, a curious blend of whatever was scavenged that day, mingling perfectly with the occasional whiff of unmistakable body odour. Yes, this is your banquet of cosy filth, a true Viking experience. As you settle in, you can see the elder of the tribe, a man whose beard seems to have more wisdom than his limited collection of teeth. He leans forward, flashing a grin that could probably scare off a bear. "Listen closely, friends," he bellows, and just like that, everyone becomes unnaturally attentive. In a world without Netflix, YouTube, or viral cat videos, storytelling is the best form of entertainment, and perhaps the only one that doesn't involve inadvertently challenging your neighbour to a duel. the elder flourishes mythological sagas, his voice booming like Thor himself descending from the heavens, if Thor were slightly tipsy and occasionally lost his place. It all began with the fierce dragon Fafnir, he proclaims, raising his tankard as if he's about to charge into battle. You can't help but wonder, did Vikings really fight dragons? Or is this just a way to spice up the fact that they're perpetually struggling to hunt, gather, and stop horrible things from happening to them? The Elder dives into Fafnir's story, a tale filled with betrayal, riches, and of course, plenty of hero worship, because no hero is complete without the obligatory tragic backstory. You can already see the jabbering facial expressions from the other storytellers, eager to rival him at this moment of performance, uncannily like today's YouTube creators competing for clicks and likes, but with more furs and fewer selfies. There's laughter as Fafnir is depicted as a vicious dragon who turns into a freakishly paranoid giant, fearing that someone might come after his legendary gold. You can't help but think there's a lesson here regarding the potential downsides of hoarding valuables, a concept that resonates deeply in both Viking times and today's storage unit nightmares. As the night rolls deeper into the black, tales change tempo, swinging from epic battles against mythical beasts to exaggerated accounts of average Viking daily life. The crowd bursts into laughter as one drunken warrior describes his daring confrontation with a particularly feisty goat. Apparently the goat didn't appreciate him trying to steal its food, truly a fierce adversary. You lean in, eager to hear how the story unfolds as he competes to show off his battle wounds, a dubious collection that opens with a dramatic flourish before descending into the shame of having been bested by an angry animal. In between sips of ale and the hearty slaps on backs, you briefly contemplate what a modern-day Viking would still complain about in their Longhouse saga. So there I was, stuck in a longhouse during winter, with no Wi-Fi, no heated seats, and my only source of entertainment was a goat and a rattling hangover. Surely your Viking ancestors must have had their own versions of these rants. Less about unpaid bills and more about having to share a roof with far too many brothers or the lack of reliable rations. Time passes, and just when you thought the stories couldn't get any wilder or far-fetched, in steps a newcomer, an old lady with just as much bravery in her tales as any warrior. She regales the eager crowd with tales of mystical creatures and mischievous trolls that lurk beneath the fjords. Her eyes sparkle, as if she knows a secret. The kind of secret that can only be passed down through generations and bottles of cheap ale. What comes next is a vivid description of a troll attempt that ended not in carnage, but slapstick humiliation. You can almost see these trolls tripping over their own feet, while dragging their oversized boulders, ensuring that no one in the storytelling circle can hold back their laughter. As the embers of the fire die down, you realise that Viking life revolves around more than just raids and farming. It is in these moments of shared laughter, cocky bravado, and exaggerated embellishments of the many fights, real or imagined, that the very spirit of community comes alive. Each story serves as a thread connecting you to their cultural fabric. So, as you snuggle deeper into the warmth of the Longhouse, you find solace in knowing that amid the chaos of chaos, there was one truth. Sharing laughter, even with a goat, makes this wilderness a lot more bearable. Cheers to that. Forget bedtime stories. The Vikings had their own approach to nighttime preparation. The nightly ritual consists of a handful of warm ale, an assortment of breathing techniques for shared livestock, and a gentle but firm prayer to the gods that the roof holds up against impending storms. As you huddle in your corner of the longhouse, your bare feet crunch over a floor more familiar with mud than with cleanliness. You ponder whether there was ever a time someone actually thought of a bedtime story as an important part of a child's life. Instead, the tales revolve around legendary conquests, fearsome battles, and the occasional sea monster that was probably just someone's very lost sheep. Before you settle in for the night, let's talk etiquette. Do you lie down like a civilized human or sprawl out on the hay like your cousin Bjorn after too many cups of mead? Spoiler alert. The hay is happier when used as a mattress, so you roll over and try not to cough as the dust and also significant amounts of whatever mayhem you stirred up during dinner float around the room. The scent is a delightful blend of goat droppings, mismatched body odours, and last week's fish stew, an aroma that is both intoxicating and slightly nauseating. As you begin to doze off, remember that in Viking culture, dreams were often seen as messages from the gods or ominous warnings of impending doom. Ah, the usual, you think. Not only do you have to contend with the barnyard symphony going on around you, but you also worry that one of those dreams will involve angry gods, reminding you about your less than stellar attempts at personal hygiene. Sweet dreams are definitely not on the menu here. Alas, the tranquility of your slumber is interrupted as you hear a loud thump nearby. Is it a moose? A rogue Viking ready to raid your dreams? Nope, just Olaf, who has passed out face first in the ale bucket again. It seems old Olaf has taken a more literal interpretation of going to bed, and now he's snoring like a chorus of thunder. Meanwhile, the floor beneath him rejoices, shaken up in celebration of his unreliability. Still, there's something strangely comforting about the whole spectacle. These are your people. You laugh inwardly while trying to avoid the goat's wary glare. You know it's only a matter of time before it decides you look like a tasty midnight snack. You check your surroundings, making sure your neighbours are mostly in a horizontal position, rather than wrestling with the livestock, and settle back for a communal roar of snorting snores and belching echoes that will rock you into dreams of uncertain adventures. As the evening deepens, the warmth of the roasted venison left over from dinner wafts through the air like the ghost of promises made earlier. Ah, the Vikings surely know their priorities. Food first, stories second, and sleep is but a hazy afterthought. You grasp your coat tighter against the draught, praying the wind won't find a way. Through the gaps in the walls, wooden structures in Viking homes are not so much houses as they are elaborate game shows designed to test your endurance against the elements and your own sanity. Then comes the ultimate signal that the evening is winding down. The chatter of warriors is replaced by something far more terrifying. Silence. Silence in a Viking longhouse means sleep is around the corner, but it's not a comforting silence. It's the kind of silence that leaves you with a feeling that rather than lulling you to sleep, someone might be planning to turn the longhouse into a matchmaking hub for the local trolls. Suddenly, falling asleep feels like inviting the unexpected into your dreams. Closing your eyes, hoping for the best, you begin to think of all the absurdity surrounding you, the countless tales of valour and valorous, yet questionable choices weighing heavily on your mind. You may not be a majestic Norse hero, but in this longhouse, you're a willing participant in the berserk life of refined chaos. Eventually your thoughts drift toward an honest wish, that you'll at least awake without being stuck atop a goat, or an even worse misalignment of your sleeping neighbours. Perhaps tonight will be the night that you become the first Viking to wake up and proclaim, "I'm tired and mad at the universe all at once, and it's not even noon yet." And finally, as fatigue lulls you into a gentle embrace, you realise there's something undeniably beautiful about shared discomfort. It's a collective human struggle against the forces of nature, spirits of folklore, and potentially aggressive livestock redefining personal space. You drift off, buoyed by the knowledge that no matter the chaos or even the winds, there's one solid truth. In the Viking longhouse, camaraderie transcends comfort, and laughter rings louder than any storm outside. May the gods have mercy on the goats tonight, for you'll need every ounce of luck you can get for tomorrow's shenanigans. When it's time for personal grooming, prepare to learn Viking ingenuity, or rather, the complete lack of it. Water and washing are as foreign as the concept of class distinctions. Instead, you'll enjoy a fragrant waft of, "I hope this is just dirt," as you rub your hands through your hair. Good luck finding a comb. In fact, chances are you will mistakenly attempt to detangle your mane with a piece of unfinished armour or the sharp end of a broken tool. The locals believe that washing is less about cleanliness and more about tempting fate. Who needs clean hair anyway, when you can have fierce, unkempt style that shouts, "I'm a warrior, even if I just got up from a pile of hay"? So, how do you clean yourself in this charmingly rustic environment? The leading method involves standing near the hearth and hoping that enough smoke wafts over you to mask any lingering scents. It's basically artisanal air freshening, Viking style. You can even spice it up with a spritz of rainwater collected from the roof, if you're lucky enough to find a container in the chaos. If the weather's cooperative, congratulations. Your hair has officially joined the Viking hairstyle of choice, the "I swam in a pigsty" look. But if you're more of the risky type and think of yourself as a culinary experimentalist, you might consider trying out concoctions made from the local herbs and plants. Want a bit of mint? Good luck finding it amid the wild game left unattended on the floor. Simple washing rituals, you soon discover, typically result in an experience you might compare to what it's like to wash your car in a rainstorm. Lots of hope with surprisingly little success. Who knew that a Viking-style shampoo could consist of little more than mud and a promise? Let's not forget that hair isn't the only thing at risk. The Viking Longhouse is like a real-time horror show for your skin. You can trade in any hope of a luxurious bath for the much-loved tradition of rolling around in sawdust or crumbling hay. Seriously, it's like a communal spa day, but without the hygiene part. You acquire an ever-increasing collection of parasites along with a sense of belonging to your fellow Longhouse dwellers. Nothing says, "We're all in this together," quite like scratching at fleas while bolstering an unshakable bond of distress. The cold weather doesn't do you any favours either. When the chill settles in, your skin will start resembling a sun-dried apple, and all those outdoor escapades assure you a lovely combination of chapped lips and cracked knuckles. Forget about hydrating lotions or cosy bath oils. You will need to get creative. Just reach for the nearest animal fat, it's multifunctional. Apply it generously, and give off a charming "I might smell like a roast, but at least I'm not freezing" vibe. And speaking of versatile offerings, don't even think about enemas of luxury here. No back to Eden holistic treatments or eucalyptus-scented bliss. More like steaming your skin over a pot of excessive pig fat. Just think of it as modern-day live streaming. If not professionally, then just a wild reality check on what living really looks like. After an exhausting day of survival in the Longhouse, you might be tempted to meditate on how your personal grooming habits no longer resemble those of the mainstream civil society. But who are you kidding? These days, standing shoulder to shoulder with goats and questionable fish stew is cosmically rewarding, so waking up to strands of your own hair sticking to your face feels oddly comforting. Each day in the Longhouse only adds layers, literally. The chaos of shared living, with the goats, the muddy floors, and yes, everyone's personal assortment of filth, congeals into a bizarre form of camaraderie. Suddenly you realise you've become the Viking equivalent of a naturalist, fully accepting that soap is but an idea concocted in fantastical dreamscapes. In this universe, dirt promotes character, and every bit of grime tells a tale. So, as you contemplate your intriguing battle with shampoo defeat, and realise that scalp conditions may soon take it upon themselves to stage a mini coup, you also become part of a legacy rich with tradition. A tradition where personal grooming is a hilarious setback in the grand theatre of Viking life. You may never rock that flowing, luscious hair again, but as a warrior's life lesson puts it, at least you survived. Perhaps you thought your home was crowded. Try sharing a longhouse with another family, several goats, and a cat whose life goal seems to be chaos. The noise level is as high as a Norse battle cry. Each night, you'll wonder if you're living next door to a family of rowdy partygoers or a crew of drunken warriors. You close your eyes, attempting to drift off, but the symphony of snorts, bleats, and the occasional yowl from that cat plays more like a chaotic sea shanty than a lullaby. As you lie wrapped in your scratchy wool blanket, you contemplate how many goats are too many goats. Is the one chewing on your hair a friend or foe? Is this how Viking friendships start? Sneaking midnight snacks of hay and potato peels? Caught between the puddles of animal droppings and the faint scent of last week's spoiled fish stew, your thoughts often drift to confirming your soulmate status with the family dog who is currently sleeping on your face. Yes, life in the Longhouse is a true lesson in compromise. Just as you finally start to nod off, the newlywed couple next door begins their nightly dispute about who left the door to the goat pen ajar. Spoiler alert. The goat might have eaten the wedding vows, and the husband is using all his persuasive skills to convince his wife that yes, there is a potential goat conspiracy. At this hour of the night, your odds of finding sleep feel like sailing into the mouth of a sea monster. There's a slight chance, but it's mostly terrifying. When dawn breaks, you stumble over your neighbours as they work tirelessly to catch a runaway goat named Bjorn. This goat has an uncanny knack for destruction, and is one bad decision away from claiming the crown for most wanted goat. Ah, the joys of sharing a home. You quickly learn that being close-knit doesn't just mean sharing a roof. It also involves negotiating your space, dodging horns, and providing emotional support to every squawking chicken that might feel neglected. Now, it's time to prepare breakfast, or, as you quickly learn, a Viking power struggle. Imagine gathering around the central fire with the family. The air is thick with anticipation, an aroma of something that might resemble breakfast, but you can't quite put your finger on it. Could it be oat porridge? Perhaps. Or it could very well be last week's discarded stew that didn't quite get eaten at the communal feast because someone mistook it for livestock feed. Over this pot of almost breakfast, heated debates erupt about who would get the final hunk of bread, ultimately resulting in something akin to Viking karaoke, as everyone claims their rightful piece. You half suspect the cat is the true silent arbiter of this mealtime mayhem, and yet, despite the madness, there's an unexplainable camaraderie amidst the chaos. As you pass around bowls and cups, your neighbours rotate between friendly jibes and well-meaning insults. There's a violent joy in these exchanges, the kind that makes you feel more alive than any modern sitcom. You find it hard to believe, but you're quickly becoming part of this boisterous family. After all, how often does one have the opportunity to argue over the very nature of goat ownership while sipping on watered-down ale? You officially have entered the realm of Viking diversity. After breakfast, the Longhouse transforms into its next incarnation, Battleground. As the families prepare for daily duties, the call for labour echoes through the air. Children dart around underfoot, tripping over each other as they grasp at their dreams of someday wielding a shield instead of a wooden paddle. Swapping spirited stories of brave warriors, they head off to help with daily chores, while you try to navigate your way through narrow hallways adorned with an eclectic mix of hunting trophies and questionable artwork. Let's be real. Some of it looks suspiciously like a doodle of a goat. But just as you're settling into this vivid medieval life scenario, you realise the Longhouse does offer a sense of safety from the outside world. Fierce raiders, sharp swords, the occasional dragon. Here, you're part of a community that feels as comfortable as it is crazy. You may never sign up for the Neighbour of the Year award, mostly because the goats ate all the paper, But you are home, tangled with laughter, warmth, and perhaps a few lingering smells of what just was. In this Viking neighbourhood, humour reigns supreme, camaraderie thrives through chaos, and while you might just be a temporary tenant in a longhouse, you are absolutely living in the heart of every wild tale that will be shared for generations. So put on your thickest skin and your best embrace of folly, because life here, it's one boisterous adventure you won't want to miss. After all that ale and a constant refusal to wash, one must ponder, how do Vikings manage their arguments? This becomes an entertaining spectacle, complete with slurred speech, and a competition to see who can hurl insults more creatively than the other. Arms and insults will fly. Picture this, a typically chilly Viking longhouse, the hearth crackling with warmth, and laughter erupting from a circle of friends, adversaries, each clutching their mugs as they compete in the age-old dance of banter. The insults are as plentiful as the ale, and if verbal sparring could be classified as a sport, these Vikings would be Olympic champions. "Odin's beard!" one boisterous warrior yells, clumsily swiping a piece of bread off the table. You'd become the first Viking to lose a battle against a pile of hay. Roars of laughter bounce off wooden walls, mingling with the smell of old fish stew and persistent goat. If you thought roast beef was an odd source of humour, you ought to hear what they have to say about last night's dinner. But the real charm of these quarrels isn't just the shouting, it's the added physicality. Jostling for position amidst the din, an elbow finds its way into your ribs, someone's foot kicks your boot, and the next thing you know, you're unwittingly part of a rowdy jousting match. "I'll take you on," a burly warrior challenges, stumbling toward you, probably wrongly convinced he's the new champion of the longhouse. Good luck keeping your focus amidst the raucous chaos as you mentally map out your escape from the impending dogpile. And do not be surprised when swords come out, or at least what passes for swords in this rustic abode. Let's be clear, we're not talking about refined weapons of delicate design. No, these swords resemble chunks of scrap metal pretending to be menacing. It's more of an ode to weaponry than the real deal. So as things escalate, you may find yourself dodging what can only be described as a glorified butter knife, aimed at an unsuspecting potato, or potentially your shin. The best part about all this, it's completely normal. There are no worries about etiquette here, just an earnest competition to assert superiority over the mess you're all part of. Warriors bickering over who is more adept at throwing a battle axe will inevitably spend half an hour in a spirited debate over the finer points of who took out the most sheep last winter. Raucous laughter and absurd bragging rights come with the territory of longhouse life. Amidst the shenanigans and sloshing mugs, certain unspoken rules emerge. You're not officially in the fight until someone mentions their mother. It's the cornerstone of Viking insults. "Your mother's so lazy she'd hibernate through a raid" becomes a phrase that boisterously rings through the hall. At this point you can expect an uproar. Beware, however, should you be the one to take the plunge and throw such a line, don't be shocked when you find yourself on the receiving end of the same jest. In Viking society, it's a cyclical exchange of glories and shame, and every retaliatory jest reaffirms your place in the communal hierarchy. But as the night wears on, and the ale flows like winter rain, the harmony of banter can take shocking turns. Friends can quickly become frenemies as pint mugs become weapons, and camaraderie turns into a duel that ends with everyone rolling on the floor in laughter. Or, occasionally, with a nosebleed and half a broken tooth. Just remember, however injured you feel, you're only a Viking when you take your lumps and come back for more. It's like a rite of passage, solidifying the friendships and rivalries that define your time in this rambunctious habitat. As your night deepens, you realise, surprisingly, that it's not just a food and drink-fueled melee, it's a rite of passage into Viking culture. Amidst the laughter and jabbing remarks, a sense of belonging grows, even amongst the chaos of misstepped barbs and precarious jousts. You may find yourself smiling while wiping ale from your face and regretting your safety as the battle rages on. Who knew that one evening in a Viking Longhouse would become a litmus test for your resilience and a vivid reminder that laughter, no matter the context, truly might be the best weapon of all? So, with a mischievous grin, you prepare for whatever ridiculousness awaits, fully accepting that Viking life is, above all else, a shared tapestry woven from the threads of chaos, camaraderie, and very questionable ale. Suddenly you realise the Viking sense of style is less bold and beautiful, and more flamboyant woolen disaster. Layers of heavy sleeves and knee-length tunics add flair when they aren't catching fires from the hearth. Good luck dodging the embers while trying to impress your neighbour. When your trusty fire pit, essential for both cooking and warmth, threatens to transform your ensemble into a fashionable funeral pyre, you might start questioning your outfit choices. Viking fashion is all about practicality over elegance, as evidenced by the rough-spun wool that offers dubious warmth at best. You can almost hear your mother-in-law's murmurs of disapproval as you waddle past the hearth, trying to avoid any unwanted barbecues. Let's take a moment to talk about accessories, or lack thereof. The only jewellery you might find adorning a Viking is a simple brooch, more useful for pinning together layers of wool than for blinding rivals in battle. If the boarhide belt you're forced to wear with that stylish tunic can hold up your pants, consider it a win. You wonder if you could convince anyone to admire your total package of wool, leather, and a hint of stale fish, but chances are they may just be stifling a gag instead. And what's the deal with footwear? You'd think warriors would know how essential shoes are, but nope. Most Vikings roam the Longhouse barefoot or in slipshod leather sandals no self-respecting cobbler could devise. The soles are probably as thin as the ale you drank last night, leaving you susceptible to frostbite or stubbed toes. Great choices, neither of which could endear you to your neighbours. How's your foot? Oh, it's just a bit frozen, thanks for asking. Don't even get me started on headgear. In the grand fashion show that is Viking life, the most head-turning accessory is the horned helmet, which actually looks like a bad DIY project gone wrong. While they grab attention like a flaming marshmallow in a dark cave, the truth is they're not practical or historically accurate either. The reality is you're more likely to see a perfectly ordinary leather cap or nothing at all. You lean into the idea of simple warmth, as it seems that style rules dictate your head must surely feel the consequences of winter gusts. Speaking of feeling the consequences, as a Viking your hairstyle choices are wonderfully ludicrous. Business in the front and party in the back. Welcome to the Viking mullet. Men sport long hair that flows in the winter wind like a beautiful golden mane, almost majestic until combined with an unkempt beard that homeless cats would be proud of. Meanwhile, women skillfully entwine ribbons and a strange assortment of natural baubles into what can only be described as rough-hewn elegance, because nothing says fertility like a twigs and rope hairdo intertwined with wild flowers. In terms of Fashion Week, well, the truth hurts. The Viking lifestyle has no such span of time to concern itself with seasonal trends. This is a one-outfit-fits-all scenario, and once it's been stretched, torn and fused with goat hair, it becomes less high fashion and more laundry basket Geiger counter. You might convince yourself that the vintage-age scent emanating from your clothing is a mark of distinction, but your nose begs to differ. As night provides a chilly blanket over the Longhouse, your wool tunics become soggy with dinner remnants and spilled ale. How's that for a fashion statement? the only twinkle you'll see in your ensemble is the single tear rolling down your neighbour's cheek as you exchange looks of camaraderie regarding your shared social tragedy. Surrounded by your fellow Longhouse denizens, there's a collective sigh. Surely Viking life is better suited for a more fashionable time, or at least someone with a washing machine. So tonight, as you settle in with a half-rotted goat and a good measure of shivering despair over your latest fashion choices, consider the lyrical tragedy that is Viking style. At the end of the day, and likely several rounds of ale, you can raise your mug in defeat as your neighbours nod knowingly. Who needs a tailored suit when you have the charm of a well-worn outfit, a belly full of mystery stew, and the steadfast love of an entire Longhouse that understands? Fashion may come and go, but your Viking look is here to stay, probably to the dismay of every last passerby and the faint smell of goats. Cheers. Of course, there's a goat in the mix. But it's not just any goat, it's the family goat. Loyal, stubborn, and very likely judging your every life choice. You'll soon understand who really serves as the emotional support here. Could it be the goat? Absolutely. In a Viking Longhouse where personal boundaries are as thin as the walls, having a goat is both a blessing and a test of your mental resilience. This creature saunters around, munching on whatever it finds, from a discarded piece of last week's fish to the hem of your tunic. You never quite know what to expect from its antics, and let's be honest, it emits a reassuring aura of chaos. As you try to sip your morning ale, because breakfast is, of course, a pint of something fermented, you catch the goat staring at you with a level of intensity that feels eerily judgmental. It seems to be critiquing your life choices, your hair, or lack thereof, and most importantly, the fashionable decision to wear yesterday's clothing again. Why shower when you have the constant companionship of strong odours? The goat bleats at you, almost as if it's saying, "You can do better. My coat is softer than your skin, after all." Living in close quarters means you develop a unique bond with these animals, and soon enough, you'll find that they're not just farm animals. They're the original furry therapists. Feeling anxious about the looming raid? Just look into those big, round goat eyes. They hold countless secrets, and perhaps a hint of sympathy mixed with disdain. Be careful though. If you're preoccupied, the goat might just nibble on your beard. The closest thing to a haircut you'll get in your lifetime. Trust me. Later that day you will be less Viking warrior and more, "Look at how low my self-esteem can go." Vikings sure know how to laugh off hardship, but inside a Longhouse you'll see how serious relationships with livestock can get. Each member of the family contributes to the long-term survival of the clan, and that includes the goat. But once you see it attempting to headbutt your toddler cousin, you might wonder if it's more friend or foe than you first thought. The goat's charm runs deep until it suddenly thinks it's a bull, and you're stuck dodging behind the hearth like it's an Olympic event. Now picture this. You're about to head out to the field, and in your mind, you've planned the perfect ambush against a neighbouring tribe, for the sake of glory and maybe more sheep. But the family goat has other plans, and soon you find yourselves in a tug-of-war over yesterday's leftover stew. It's a dramatic standoff, and your family members gather around like audiences at a gladiator match. "Who will win?" they shout excitedly. Spoiler, it won't be you. The goat decides that suddenly your tunic is more interesting than the 5-minute-old breakfast, and proceeds to demonstrate its undeniable claim to dominance over you. At some point, you'll realise there's a delicate equilibrium between your rights as a human being and the goat's newfound grasp of authority. This power struggle often results in mutual inconvenience, such as you being forced to relocate your seating arrangements during meals to accommodate this furry overlord, yet you can't fully deny how entertaining it is. The Viking Longhouse transforms into a sitcom where goats steal the show. As the days roll into weeks, you might start to form actual friendships with the other animals. A pig named Grunty and a resolutely lazy dog named Thor. Imagine walking into the Longhouse after a hard day's labour, only to find Grunty happily rooting through your belongings, likely seeking a snack of your well-earned bread. In moments like these, you can't help but chuckle, realising that your life now revolves around keeping Grunty and your goat from eating your week-old provisions. And let's not forget the potential hazards that come with livestock. Just as you feel a bonding moment with your furry friends, you'll discover that each has a unique way of convincing you to reconsider your life choices. The remnants of woolly blankets turning into chew toys and the inevitable overflow of their gifts will ensure that life in the Longhouse remains endlessly entertaining, perhaps more than you'd like. So, as night falls and your goat curls up next to you in bed, farting its way into your probable nightmares, just remember, this was your choice. Embrace the absurdity. Friends? Foes? Perhaps both. In Viking life, that goat is your family now, and while you might miss the warmth of a blanket, at least you can enjoy the warmth of a goat that thinks of you as one of its own, much to your chagrin. By now, you've become acquainted with the idea of hunting, but navigating Viking hunting practices and how to tackle a porcupine without an etiquette guide can be dangerous, to say the least. Not to mention the strong chance of an unfortunate encounter with a very angry boar. The Vikings were renowned for their prowess in the wild, but their approach to hunting involved a delicate balance of skill, courage, and a touch of sheer luck. Strapping on your sturdy leather boots, you'd better hope you mastered the essential skills required. Stealth, speed, and the ability to determine whether a rustling bush is a potential dinner or an imminent disaster. As you set out into the dense underbrush, freshly sharpened spear in hand and a hodgepodge of ambitions in your heart, a cacophony of nature welcomes you, chirps, growls, and the subtle rustle of those pesky critters acting like they own the place. You sneak forward with a confidence that's a questionable mix of bravado and naivete. As you weave through trees, you can't help but wonder, how often do people trip over roots and fall face first into whatever it is that's considered nature's equivalent of a low-budget cologne? It's bound to happen. But what's a Viking without a bit of rugged charm and occasional facial plantings? Now, you might expect a proper Viking hunter to locate a boar or a stag right away, but instead, you stumble upon the least majestic creature this side of the fjord, the porcupine. It's snuffling about like it owns the land, blissfully unaware of the looming danger just a few feet away. Approaching this peculiar prickly beast isn't easy. Did you know that porcupines can actually launch their quills at you when threatened? Great. The last thing you want is to add porcupine pin cushion to your already less than glamorous Viking resume. As you inch closer, your mind races with thoughts of boar roast and hearty stews, but the reality is much sharper. The porcupine turns its beady eyes towards you, and your heart races faster than the time you mistook fermented fish for cheese. Suddenly, all that Viking bravado comes crashing down, as it's you or the porcupine in this raw showdown of fates. You breathe in, perhaps too deeply. Like a true warrior, you'll have to decide quickly. Do you play it cool and hope it wanders off, or do you risk it all and lunge forward with the kind of grace only a poorly coordinated mammal could muster? Then there's the added complication. In the distance, you hear the unmistakable sounds of hooves stampeding in your direction. Your potential boar has arrived, but of course it's charging towards you with the enthusiasm of a toddler on a sugar rush. Talk about bad timing. With your spear raised and a porcupine silently screaming at you from the ground, you can't help but think this is the worst day imaginable. You've successfully endangered your life in two entirely different ways, and you're still not sure whether you'll be having roast boar or porcupine salad for dinner. In an attempt to flee the scene, you realise there's no running. turning to look back at your quilled foe, you inadvertently step on a twig, producing a crack loud enough to wake the gods. The porcupine huffs as if discussing your ancestry with its piercing eyes, and suddenly, like the ultimate betrayal, you realize the boar has ceased its merciless charge. Instead, startled wildlife retreat as they witness this unholy union of human folly. The porcupine waddles off triumphantly, while a boar snorts in indignation, leaving you standing like a bewildered statue in the wild. As you slowly retreat to your longhouse, you can't help but share this near-chivalric tale with your fellow Vikings, who laugh boisterously at the description of your face-off with one of nature's fluffier and pricklier creatures. You've not only become a hunting expert, but also acquired a new nickname, the Porcupine Protector. And as you poke fun at the entire situation, one triumph remains clear. Despite your failure to bring home the glory of roast, you've successfully survived the wilderness, even if it involved an encounter with a timid porcupine and a hasty retreat from a less than hungry boar. In the end, this hunting excursion has taught you valuable lessons about bravery, persistence, and the outright absurdity of becoming a Viking. Next time, you promise yourself to scout for meat that doesn't come with built-in defense mechanisms, because quill is certainly not a culinary delight. With that, as the fire crackles in your cozy longhouse, you toast to your continued survival and the unexpected hilarity of Viking life. Cheers to porcupines. You probably thought drinking was reserved for joyous occasions, but it's a full-time job here. At midday, prepare yourself for what can only be called potentially regrettable decisions, as the ale flows like a wild river, and that no regrets motto is taken to an absolutely literal level. Cheers. The clinking of wooden tankards fills the air, interspersed with hearty laughter and, coincidentally, loud bodily functions. This is not just any snack break. It's a productive labour session where Viking men and women prove that if you're not drinking and gorging on fish jerky, are you even functioning? As you settle in, you notice a sharp-eyed Viking boasting about his latest kill. For a brief moment, he resembles a modern-day Instagram influencer whose idea of fitness is wielding a battle axe. He gestures dramatically, nearly upending his ale in the process, which is a shame because that stuff is probably stronger than your average modern liquor. Ever had a party where someone got so drunk they decided to initiate a wrestling match with the family dog? Well, imagine that, but replace the dog with a neighbour who's not afraid of friendly competition. The food isn't particularly appetizing, think early morning leftovers mixed with yesterday's mystery stew, but who cares? You're here for the ale. And speaking of ale, it's like the fountain of youth, and poor decisions rolled into one because in Viking culture, drinking is celebrated as a rite of passage, an essential social glue that helps one forget how miserable life can be in the dead of winter. It's the Viking equivalent of liquid courage, only with the side effect of spontaneous burping contests and profound philosophical discussions that would put Socrates to shame, or send him running, screaming into the night. You try to keep pace with their boisterous drinking, but as tankards are chugged, you feel your resolve waning. The ale isn't just potent, it's practically a hall pass to disaster. After several tankards, you might find yourself inexplicably raising your tankard in a toast to Norse gods, invoking blessings with little understanding about what you're asking for. Thor, god of thunder, grant me a second helping of pottage and maybe a favourable wind for our next raid. You can almost hear ancestors rolling in their graves. As the ale strikes, so too does a bout of courage, and you agree to participate in a drinking game that involves initially trying to guess what a family of goats would say if they could talk. Your guess of Cheese's life gets less laughs than you anticipated, and suddenly it turns into a competition of who can replicate goat noises accurately. Your performance isn't award-winning, but it earns you a raucous cheer, and suddenly you've become the star of this wild Viking afternoon. This also keeps you blissfully unaware that your partners have begun impromptu competitions of who can throw a tankard the farthest without hitting a member of the next longhouse, or worse, hitting the livestock. Alas, you witness the chaos unfold, and just when you think it can't get more ridiculous, a small goat manages to get into the mix, boldly prancing around, perhaps eager to join in on the shenanigans or to simply escape the smell of beer-soaked warriors. As stamping and laughter echo around you, you might question your choices as a Viking newbie. Is this really a place I can call home, you wonder? Am I about to be initiated into a bizarre goat-calling and heavy-drinking fraternity? But just as you're about to convince yourself to downplay the insanity, the Viking spirit rises in you. You decide to join in wholeheartedly, clutching your tankard high and chanting some warrior-like mantra that sounds suspiciously like gibberish. Eventually the sun starts to wane. The ale flows generously, and you're not quite certain if the cheers are for you or the goat, but at this point, who would care? You'll have no regrets. An afternoon spent consuming copious amounts of ale may not be a Michelin star experience, but it sure beats any modern 5-star restaurant where the only aim is to keep the gluten-free trend alive. As the sun dips below the horizon, the longhouse echoes with stories, laughter, and the occasional belch. You may not be the strongest, fastest, or cleanest Viking around, but tonight you're a legend in your own right, a participant in the glorious, chaotic, and rather splendid revelry of the midday drunk. As the ale takes over, so too do the Viking traditions of bodily functions. You'll find that personal hygiene may take a backseat to the delightful chaos of communal gatherings filled with burps, farts, and the delicate art of blaming the livestock for it all. Grab a mug, down a pint of mead, and prepare yourself as you join the throngs of belly-shaking laughter, where it's quite normal to laugh uproariously, while a goat sneezes and someone else's ale-induced aroma wafts over the meal. In fact, the occasional whoopee cushion sound from beneath the table is likely greeted with the same reverence as a bard's ballad. Nothing less than a sign of true camaraderie among rugged souls. Naturally, shared meals are still the centrepiece of Viking life, especially when they revolve around the harrowing task of devouring meat that may or may not come from yesterday's hunt. Imagine the scene. The longhouse is packed with warriors and their families, sitting elbow to elbow, joyfully consuming stews so thick that spooning requires a small arm workout. As you dig in, you become all too aware of the chorus of grunts, gasps, and good-natured ribbing that accompanies each poorly executed attempt at digestion. Was that your stomach or a storm brewing outside? Becomes less of a playful jab and more of a legitimate inquiry as the night rolls on. Drinking, of course, plays a pivotal role in this nightly ritual of debauchery. It's like a thirst-quenching relay race where the baton is a horn of ale, and the goal is to find out just how many drinking games one can endure before losing the battle of breath, and perhaps a few other, less socially acceptable odours. With each round, the group grows more boisterous, convinced that belching the Viking battle cry after a hearty drink is an art form yet unrefined. You watch, amazed, as one brave soul rises to challenge another to a duel of lungs, each trying to outdo the other. Spoiler alert, no one's ever lost. And just when you think it can't get any more aromatic, in waltzes a neighbour's cow, who clearly didn't get the no livestock indoors memo. Now the mysterious mists aren't just from ale-induced breath, but also from the cow, who seems to strut right into the middle of the feast. You can't help but chuckle as another warrior gaudily explains how it invaded with all the grace of a drunken bard tripping over his own feet. Those who would usually shy away from discussing bodily functions now find themselves launching epic sagas that include the unfortunate moment a goat escaped and rolled into the stew. Despite being quite the spectacle, there's an unspoken bond that forms here. In fact, as tales of bodily misadventures unfold, you start to truly appreciate how Vikings thrive on communal toughness. It's all in good fun, of course, until someone decides it's time to stand up on the bench, warm ale in hand, and then let it all out, quite literally. The bold claim that one's meal could be better, amidst a cacophony of laughter, is met with cheers and toasts, making for a raucous night that blends companionship with an unyielding acceptance of one another's imperfection. As the ale continues to flow, so does the wisdom, sort of. You'll hear musings on how cleanliness was more of a guideline rather than an expectation. A world where a perfect balance of cow dung and hearty stew is seen as a rightful trade-off. It's the ultimate reflection of Viking values. Embrace the chaos, savour the flavour, and, for the love of Odin, let it all out. So, as the skies darken and the flickering flames cast playful shadows upon your face, you realise that survival amongst the essence of Viking living isn't just about the food or drink. It's about embracing the large-scale absurdity of a bonded life. You toast again to the joy of communal hilarity, where every bellyache becomes a legendary tale and every poorly timed toot is a brave declaration of Viking irreverence. As you watch the night unfold, you finally understand that in a Viking Longhouse, the true battle isn't merely breath, it's the delightful joy of shared laughter and togetherness come what may. When the hour grows late, and your individual will to sleep combats the stubborn Viking tradition of perpetual partying, you'll soon discover that night watch does not involve much watching at all. In fact, it's a competition to see who can manage to stay upright while the thought of sleep drifts away. As you lean against the cool wooden wall, you're surrounded by the joyous cacophony of raucous laughter and the inevitable slosh of tankards hitting the floor, all while several roosters appear to have formed a union, demanding better terms for their early morning shifts. You rub your eyes, wishing for a pair of earplugs, but alas, the only thing resembling earplugs around here are the friendly pigs curled up at your feet. Let's talk about the wondrous camaraderie that comes with a night watch. This isn't just a small gathering of tipsy Norsemen boasting about their conquests, or recounting how they single-handedly fought off a bear with nothing but a butter knife. The details vary. Just roll with it. No, this is a full-fledged Viking fiesta, where everyone's got a lively tale. Somewhere between the tales of glorious raids and how many horned helmets you can realistically wear at once, you'll find yourself slapped on the back and challenged to wager your reputation on who can chug ale fastest. Here, the difference between valiant and foolish is simply a matter of how many tankards you've emptied by midnight. Every few minutes, you glance over at the sleeping livestock, praying they can't hear the escalating debates about who among the group would survive a polar bear encounter. Apparently, Sigurd's strategy of just run faster than the slowest Viking has convinced no one because, frankly, you'd rather not be part of the backstory for someone's performance art piece about bear encounters gone wrong. The crowd may cheer on his dubious plan, but you can't help wondering if that woolly ram overheard him. Good luck explaining that slip on the kitchen floor in the morning, which, by the way, you'll probably end up embellishing to cover the fact that the floor really needed a mopping last month. And just when you thought the spectre of sleep would finally pry you away from the revelry, there's Thorvald, champion storyteller, drunk enough to start singing sea shanties about sea serpents while attempting to mimic their movements. It's mesmerising in a way that only a Viking after his 5th mug of ale can achieve. Of course, he ends up stumbling backward and landing squarely on the rather disgruntled goat Matilda, whose bleat can only be interpreted as Viking for What the actual fjord, man? At this point, your willpower is officially battling the urge to howl with laughter as Thorvald wrestles with Matilda's apparent vengeance, fighting off horns and thumping hooves in a spirited slapstick showdown. Why, oh why didn't you take the advice about sleeping while you had the chance? The Night Watch quickly becomes a vital social experiment about motivational speeches gone horribly wrong. You'll note that neighbouring families are actively watching from their side of the Longhouse, pretending not to be entertained by the midnight chaos, and it's at moments like this that you realise there are only two real occupants on your side of the wall: humiliation and hilarity. Then comes the inevitable moment when the alcohol and adrenaline wear off, leading to the embarrassing spectacle of heads bobbing and laughter turning uneven, accompanied by the sound of snoring. Eventually the warriors start leaning in strange angles against the wooden beams, and it's time for you to be the unignorable noise in their sleepy mixed jungle, all the while channeling your inner Norse guardian. Watch out for the goat, as another Viking gently topples into the feed bucket that might now even qualify as a makeshift bed. As you cling to a sliver of consciousness, all you can do is wade through the merry madness unfolding around you. It's a splendid mix of raucous energy and comfort, creating a scene that feels both homey and utterly chaotic, a crucible of camaraderie, where mischief intertwines seamlessly with earnest warmth. You might even find acceptance among the raggedly exuberant camaraderie. After all, tomorrow will bring fresh battles, packing disasters, and possibly the faint promise of breakfast that, good luck with that, might be less than edible. So, as you eventually surrender to sleep, head bouncing upon a well-placed haystack or, more likely, the goat's back, at least take comfort in the knowledge that you are now a fully initiated member of the comically disorganised Viking Night Watch. Whether or not you survive the morning unscathed remains a delightful mystery of fate, but for now, surrounded by laughter and livestock, you drift off, knowing you've survived a night full of tales, laughter, and perhaps the best reason of all, to share drunken stories and probably bruised egos at tomorrow's breakfast table. Your gloriously adventurous night comes to a head as the hangover dawns upon you, a bitter reminder of all those mini bottle breakers you've consumed. Congratulations. You understand now why Vikings embrace the next day with a sense of pride, savouring fish guts and yesterday's debate on who wrestled better. As you groggily blink awake, the slanting light spilling into the Longhouse feels like 1,000 spears piercing through your skull. You attempt to stretch, but are greeted by the overwhelming smell of unwashed bodies and stale mead, mixing in a particularly vile miasma that settles over the Longhouse like a wet blanket soaked in despair. This is the time of day when the ancient Yorkshire saying, "persistence can conquer all," falters. Trying to rise from your bed of furs, you're instantly reminded of the Viking philosophy on sleep. Apparently, they believed that just laying there was a fine way to prepare for the rigours of the day. Who needs motivation when there's a spicy stew brewing? Maybe they were onto something, but you're pretty sure there is a limit to that philosophy when you can still feel last night's questionable seafood lurking in your stomach. You stumble outside into the Viking morning, a bright, harsh panorama of frost and impending doom. Even the sun seems to glare at you, disappointed in your choices. The chill hits your face like a cold slap, reminding you how tragically ill-prepared humans are for such an unforgiving climate. As you stand there contemplating whether to greet the world or just fall back into the warmth of your guilt-laden wool blankets, a familiar figure approaches. It's Olaf, your Longhouse neighbour, and that guy who performs belly flops into mud, which apparently translates into something worthy of hero worship amid the Viking crowd. Ready to raid? He chuckles, his grin suggesting that he's either found a second wind or simply lacks any sense of consequence. You wonder if it's too early to remind him that breakfast is a vital part of surviving another day. But alas, even the most noble Vikings fail miserably at breakfast etiquette. These people eat just about anything in sight, often curating a delightful mix of fermented fish, stale bread, and whatever animal other people's dogs chased out under the longhouse the night before. Bellyache from last night's festivities, Olaf states casually, tilting his head in a display of compassionate concern, or perhaps he's just reflecting on his own digestive disasters. You nod, your gut simulating an internal war far more ferocious than any raiding party could muster. "Ah, you'll be fine," he reassures, like someone trying to comfort a moose that just tripped on a tree stump. "A good round of a herring will cure anything." You can only shake your head in disbelief at the Viking diet choices. Eating something that smells worse than something you might find under a lazy goat's tail might not be the best solution for a hangover. You slowly saunter back inside the longhouse with Olaf, hoping the enthusiasm will give you the will to devour whatever slop appears on the communal table. As the lovable chaos of family life around you unfolds, a barrage of breakfast chatter fills the air. Just as you attempt to find your footing, your host, Ingrid, throws a pile of mustard-covered fish on your plate, as though it were a gourmet meal fit for a king. "Ah, eat up. It'll cure the ill and prepare you for battle," she grins enthusiastically, while holding up half a fish like a trophy. You consider the frying pan of fresh regret swirling in your mind, but suppress the urge to hurl. After all, the Vikings knew a thing or two about toughness, right? You take a tentative bite, chewing as though your taste buds are deliberating on whether to file a civil suit against you. The texture is reminiscent of chewing on an old shoe, but perhaps with a hint of adventure. Before you can rethink your life choices, everyone in the longhouse bursts into laughter as Olaf recounts last night's drunken wrestling match, winks, and then takes a swig of thick ale that looks suspiciously like liquid bread. You can't help but be drawn in, the communal atmosphere kicking your fatigue to the side like a scrappy chicken. With your belly half full of questionable decisions and beer, you feel your strength returning. Or perhaps it's just another round of the Viking brew coursing through your veins. Either way, you're ready to try and tackle whatever the day throws at you. As your fellow compatriots lift their cups to toast, the camaraderie inspires you anew, cementing your resolve amongst the chaos. Who knew you could survive such a glorious mess? And there it is, the view through your foggy eyes. The Viking life isn't just about raiding and glory. It's about shared mistakes, belly laughs, and communal sacrifices. At least you're all in this together. After all, who can truly say they have conquered the morning after a night of excess and have emerged smiling, fishy breath and all? As the sun rises and every fibre of your body screams for mercy, you remember that Viking life is full of early starts. After all, raiding is just around the corner. You might be questioning your brave decision to sleep in a longhouse with plenty of ill-advised adventures to come. You roll over, hoping perhaps the goats have taken up your bed for the day, or that the neighbouring family has decided to flee with their livestock. However, as the winter sun struggles to break through the heavy thatched roof, the stench of last night's ale mingles with the pungent aroma of poorly cooked fish makes it clear. No such luck. You stumble from your straw bedding, the remnants of a post-feast hangover echoing in your skull like a battle drum. You shake your head, trying to clear the fog while simultaneously wondering if today's breakfast will involve something that could resemble food. The next stock of ale down in the hall isn't going to help either. Your stomach turns from the thought. As you shuffle over to the communal cooking area, where a fire crackles bravely, it hits you. Breakfast is not a thing. Breakfast might as well be a myth told around the fire to give people false hope. Instead, it's a bowl of whatever didn't manage to swim away, a bit of dried fish, and perhaps a slice of semi-edible bread, which is hard enough to double as a weapon. A fine choice for your gut. If you're still feeling a little peakish, you can always nibble on an errant bug that has graced your bowl. Resources must be carefully conserved after all. Now that you're fueled by less than appetizing remnants, your neighbour Bjorn, who, fair warning, recently discovered the joys of strong facial hair, leans in close. Ready to raid, he growls, likely trying to display camaraderie but instead inadvertently showering you with last night's dinner remnants. Absolutely, you reply, your voice tinged with skepticism. What are we raiding today? The local bakery? Because I don't think I could fight off a loaf of bread right now. As you dress in layers of wool that still carry the faint odour of last autumn's harvest, a sense of anticipation starts to bubble within. You ponder the day and the thrill of raiding. Have the villagers really considered where they left their valuables? With the proper map and a blind goat leading the way, what could possibly go wrong? Reassuringly, you can already feel the tingle of future glory on your back as you envision Viking songs being sung in your honour as they discover the spoils of your daring. However, as you gather with a band of burly warriors and a few still somewhat sober individuals, the reality of raiding starts to set in. Your group, armed with swords and shields that haven't seen an actual polishing in ages, gathers as you set aside dreams of abundance and fortunes. The most pressing concern? Making it through the day without facing your own mortality, either by sharp steel or inconvenient accidents. Outside, the brisk air bites at your cheeks as you march onward. It feels invigorating, at least until your eyes fall upon the local farm that has, unfortunately, armed itself with pitchforks and a menacing rooster that has an unsettling gleam in its eye. You share glances with your comrades. Everyone is weighing the alarming prospect of facing an angry farm team. And let's be honest, those pitchforks look much sharper in daylight. "Charge!" booms Bjorn, racing ahead, his enthusiasm failing to consider the implications of such a rallying cry. You follow suit. Speed bursts, fueled not by valour but the compelling need to outpace whatever disastrous fate awaits. That pesky rooster squawks in challenge, and without a second thought you find yourself sprinting away instead of toward floating glory, chasing away a couple of feathers instead of acquiring treasure. But you aren't quite ready to let go of your Viking dreams just yet. Each wild lookout reveals the buffet of farms and treasures ripe for the taking. Who knows? Perhaps one cursed pebble might even turn out to be an overcooked turkey leg on the best of days. Heads turn, fists swing, and your bit of panic doesn't stay unnoticed. As the day wears on, you remember the thrill of the adventure, the camaraderie, the chaos, and the foolish glorification of daring deeds. And while that dream of heroic tales to pass down might look less like feasting and more like feeding on crumbs of bread, in the end you bear the spirit of the Viking. Up against the odds and laughing through every misstep, you embrace the absurdity that is Viking life. Unsurprisingly, communal meals aren't limited to stew and questionable meats. You'll soon be introduced to the art of sharing food while keeping a vigilant eye on others' aggressive mastication patterns, as everyone tries to avoid neck bite-sized scraps from the last raid. It's a culinary battlefield out there, where elbowing your way to the pot feels like a rite of passage. You can hear the clinking of wooden bowls, the slurping of broth, and the occasional battle cries of someone who just realised their portion is a tad smaller than expected. The atmosphere resembles a football game where careful strategy is replaced by the pure instinct for survival. You'd better snag that last hunk of dried fish before someone else does. As the Viking crew tucks in, you realise the fine art of meat distribution isn't just about sharing. It's a full-blown contest. Peering around the Longhouse, you see the local butcher, let's call him Bjorn the Bountiful, slicing pieces of mystery meat with a skill that indicates he might have learned his technique in the heat of previous battles. Each slice is a challenge, an invitation for you to prey upon the meagre leftovers left unattended on that communal platter that looks like it's been used as a weapon in a fiendish food fight. Bjorn, meanwhile, operates as if he were in the Olympic finals, with people jostling for position like cats around an open tuna can. By the time the stew reaches you, it's no longer an innocent bowl of hot food, it's now a cauldron of competition. You must gauge your fellow diners carefully. Is that guy to your left calculating the exact moment to dash for seconds? Or is he merely contemplating if the meat is still technically fresh? You can almost hear the strategic whispers of the Longhouse chorus in your ear. 2 bites for you, 3 for me, but make sure to watch your back, or your front. Now, consuming food in a Viking Longhouse is not merely an act of nourishment. It's more like an extreme sport. The methodical gnawing on bones closely resembles a medieval wrestling match. Forks are substituted by your bare hands, and good luck trying to retain your dignity when you catch yourself silently praying that this greasy mutton doesn't slide right through your fingers. This is alongside the multi-sensory overload of flavours that may or may not offer the chance to discover what a real mystery meat entails. A culinary adventure steeped in gravy, and the silent question of whether it's truly spice or perhaps the residue of long-forgotten dinner debates. But fear not, the Longhouse is not without its rituals. At each meal, robust toasts are raised in celebration of raiding victories, conquests, and perhaps an exaggerated tale about how you narrowly escaped a troll last week. Be prepared for your drinking vessel, a sturdy horn, to be passed around like it's an Olympic torch, minus the dignity, of course. You must partake or risk being branded the Longhouse's kettle souffle of shame. And do you dare enter into the social etiquette of who gets to tell the most outrageous tale while consuming the last spoonful of stew? This is a task for only the bravest souls. As you navigate the sea of tales involving raging sea serpents and mystical spirits, you discover the harsh reality that participating may require more than just a full stomach. It might mean linking your story to that next oversized piece of pig. Be prepared to spin a yarn that will surely overshadow Bjorn's unmatched mutton-munching prowess. Eventually, when you're able to finally fulfill your appetite consolidated after a successful meal, however, let us not forget the aftermath. Did you remember to pace yourself? Do you find your stomach swelling to levels only previously seen in a Scandinavian cocoon? The night draws near, but physical exertion is essential. As the sensation of bending over escapes from your grasp, you realise that lying down might be a nocturnal struggle. Hopefully deep discussions about who wore the best horned helmet can distract you from your mistake of eating that last bit of pottage. Yes, your Viking comrades seem carefree, perhaps even tossing a few merry songs into the cold evening air, as they each sing praises for the stew that survived their ravenous assault. On one hand, you silently wish you could reciprocate their joyousness, yet questioning whether tomorrow would bring the delightful battle of the tummies once more fills your mind. One can only hope that the abundance of fish served today has not become tonight's midnight snack surprise. With new culinary fears eased only by tales and ale, you embrace the atmosphere that brings Vikings together, chaotic family reunion you never asked to be part of, but slowly find comfort in their uproarious squalor. As temperatures plummet, you'll soon discover the delightful chill of frost creeping its way into every corner of your existence. The Longhouse, though communal and warm during gatherings, starts feeling like a brick oven, without the oven part. You all huddle closer, swaddled together like sad, confused insects under a very frayed blanket. The flickering light of the fire offers little warmth, barely managing to melt the ice crystals forming a frosty patina on the walls. And those walls, they might be made of sturdy timber, but with gaps you could slip a finger through. They won't stop the frigid gusts of wind from infiltrating your current situation. As everyone shivers within the Longhouse, you realise that the Viking solution to winter woes is not much more than simply bearing it. You could really use a good hot cocoa right about now, maybe with marshmallows, or maybe something more exotic like hot mead, a medieval fan favourite. Sadly, instead of a cosy mug of cocoa, you get to enjoy the delightful conversations mixed with the aroma of burning wood, musty furs, and faint hints of something you pray is not the remnants of last week's stew. To stave off the chills, many of the Vikings resort to huddling close to the fire in a not-so-subtle attempt to transform their frost-bitten fingers into some semblance of warmth. The communal fire intended for cooking and illumination now serves as the prime social hub. You'll meet with your neighbours, inevitable family arguments bubbled to a low simmer, and discussions about everything from raiding plans to who really should be cleaning out the goat pen. The latter often ends in icy glares and the kind of schadenfreude that only arises when you still have skin intact. As you settle in for the long night, you're reminded that sleep is a double-edged sword in the Viking world. You might fall asleep without much ceremony, though it's more accurately described as a series of awkward positions. Your back pressed against a large figure whose regular snoring reverberates like a battle horn, while the goat provides the softest, most comforting presence imaginable, or at least it pretends to be. Cozy companionship might be sweet, but it's tinged with the realization that your dreams could soon be disrupted by the potential disaster of soiled fur. Survival skills take on a whole new meaning come winter. While you might think you're stored up on salted fish and whatever kind of root vegetables the gods left for you, you quickly disappoint yourself, facing an increasing fear of running out of food. You wonder whether root veggies might suffer from frostbite too, not that it has ever been a topic one bothered to study seriously. Washing down some slightly frostbitten leftovers with whatever grog remains becomes the winter ritual to survive until your next pitiful encounter with breath and decay. Yet the real danger isn't just the cold or lack of an adequate meal. It comes from the unpredictable nature of Viking winter. Each night the howling winds offset the uneasy feeling that frost giants might just be lurking around the corner, gearing up for some very real nighttime shenanigans. Suddenly, the prospect of becoming a Viking popsicle feels too real, and you find solace in tales of Thor smiting any blizzards unlikely to come after you. From being relegated to a life of ice-bound survival, to the sudden awareness that tomorrow's breakfast will likely involve more uncertainty, each moment unfolds in a swirl. As the fire pops and crackles, casting shadowy figures on the stone walls, laughter erupts amidst shared stories. You can't tell if it's the alcohol warming everyone's hearts, or if the joy of camaraderie puts a fleeting glow over life's inevitable frost. And in this midst, you come to appreciate that winter with its bite is a stark reminder of the Viking spirit. Out of hardship and discomfort, there's a choice: to endure with laughter as your greatest armour, or to fold under the chilling reality of it all. Okay, maybe the goat brings more warmth than for appearances. In this longhouse, where family isn't chosen but inherited, including the smell, there's an unspoken warmth that comes from the battle to survive, if only for one more night. Sure, tomorrow may once again greet you as frost threatens to colonise your hearth, but for now, it's a beautiful chaos you wouldn't trade for the world. At least not until the goats start bleating at dawn, which carries a sound eerily similar to, "Why did we let you have the last fish stew?" When the longhouse gets overrun by the neighbours' livestock secretly warming themselves next to the fire, you'll soon realise that personal space isn't a luxury you'll find here. Just pray the cow doesn't like sharing toothpaste. As you nestle into your cosy pile of furs, a massive horned creature sidles up to you, gently nudging your shoulder, as if to say, Hey buddy, you didn't think we'd let you hog all the warmth now, did you? The drafty air is suddenly filled with a bouquet of hay, sweat, and a hint of, well, regret. You start to wonder if communal living really means everyone sharing everything, including your plans to sleep quietly through the night. As the subtle aroma of dung wafts through the space, you make a mental note to add cattle wrangling as the next unexpected skill in your medieval resume. Moving livestock becomes a daily ritual as you and your newfound four-legged companions negotiate the real estate of your cosy abode. The cow, with its irresistible charm, claims the choice spot right in front of the fire, lazily munching on whatever bits of straw or your last good intentions navigating the floor. Oh, the dreams of Victorian decor you previously had, they're long gone to pasture. Mealtime takes on a whole new dimension when the livestock is part of the family. Breakfast, often consisting of basic porridge, now heavily competes with your neighbour's fried goat curiosity. A true culinary marvel, where the goat daringly leaps through various childhood dreams of becoming a chef. As you dip into your meal, you can't help but feel the gaze of your cow buddy eyeing you knowingly, as if silently critiquing your eating habits. You ponder what this creature might think about your choices. Are you really going to consume that green stuff? It snorts in its own bovine way. You could have it worse. This has been my breakfast for months. Of course, there are advantages to having cows around, especially when you consider the rich milk they provide. Hey, what's a good Viking Longhouse without a solid supply of dairy? But then come the practical considerations. When exactly do you milk the cow without rousing an existential crisis regarding your dairy etiquette? Learning how to navigate cow behaviour becomes akin to attending a negotiation seminar where all parties involved only speak in moos and tail swishes. As the sun begins to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows against the timber beams, things start to feel distinctly chaotic. It's family time, Viking style. You share stories around the flickering fire, but the over-steamy, brothed ambience fights hard against any semblance of intimacy, as your new animal roommates seem to be participating in their own wild-card storytelling too. A chorus of lowing, and the occasional clank of a horn hitting a wall sync up with your thoughts mid-tale. It's hard to concentrate when a cow's unwarranted opinion echoes as a backdrop, and let's talk about the sleeping arrangements. Typically, you could count on the soft embrace of hay to cradle you to a sweet slumber. But with your cosy companion sprawled next to you under a wool blanket, you're stuck in a constant state of light sleep, praying no hoofed intruder kicks you off the mattress mid-dream. Which reminds you, do cows dream? The answer remains unclear, but the constant sound of a cow snoring provides no comfort. As the nightly ruckus unfolds, it's not long before the neighbour's livestock encourages a new Viking tradition, the evening hoedown. Weekend-style revelry kicks in after a few mugs of homemade brew, and you find yourself in danger of inadvertently moonwalking through a muddy longhouse, tripping over your cow's tail while attempting to sidestep the rooster, who keeps making unsolicited contributions to your buzzing party atmosphere. But in this wild whirl of cramped conditions and livestock friendship, life takes on an absurd, beautifully simple charm. As you try to keep dreaming of an unencumbered poolside villa while navigating the tricky waters of cow-induced camaraderie, you realise you've become a part of something grand. Dramatic tales become cacao loco shenanigans, and every shared meal is blessed with dairy and laughter, making your Viking experience yet another unconventional chapter in the Longhouse epic you embarrassingly document during the late hours of the evening. So, embrace the chaos, sing along to the mooing symphonies, and above all celebrate the curliness that is life as you attempt to navigate your newfound farmyard family. Because let's be honest, There are worse ways to feel oddly connected than sharing a longhouse with a bemused bovine that snorts with laughter when you recount your plans for a peaceful night's sleep. As the reality of life in a longhouse sinks in, the emerging legends of your neighbours might soon become the centre of your bedtime tales. Who knew that sheep farming could lead to such wild, imaginative stories about trolls in the woods? Every night, as the fire crackles and the shadows dance around the room, you'll find yourself leaning in, eager to hear another outlandish tale that somehow combines livestock, magic, and an alarming number of runaway goats. There's Halvar, the farmer down the road, who swears he encountered a troll trying to steal his prize ram. According to Halvar, this wasn't just any troll, it was a 10-foot beast with matted hair and a penchant for poorly executed puns. I tried to negotiate, but he just kept insisting that my ram was the bleat deal in town, he says, with a twinkle in his eye. You can't help but chuckle, picturing the two of them locked in a battle of wits over a sheep. Did the troll leave empty-handed? Of course not. After all, who wouldn't want a delicious mutton stew after a long day of hiding under bridges? Then there's the tales of the old widow, Gertrude, who everyone claims is a witch, mostly because she frequently mutters to herself while harvesting herbs. Rumour has it she brewed potions that can make you fly, or at least convince a nearby neighbour that their goat is talking. Last week, some brave souls went to her door to ask for a love potion, only to return with, and I quote, pleasant indigestion. This becomes a source of entertainment as Gertrude's potions become the stuff of office lore. You find yourself thinking that next time you want to find true love, you'll take a hard pass on the magic and just stick to your trusty selection of questionable Viking ale. The stories start intertwining, and before long you'll hear about Tilda, the courageous young daughter of the blacksmith who had a face-off with the witch in the woods. Legend has it that Tilda had the gall to challenge Gertrude's magical abilities, demanding proof before she'd bother taking her garden herbs. The back and forth purportedly ended with Tilda racing home with a bag full of herbs, claiming she would return with a potion that could make her leap like a deer, even though she had a knack for tripping over shoddy fence posts. Will it work? Not likely, but what's life without a little dramatic flair, right? As evening falls, you'll witness the way these tales gather momentum. Children who once feared the night become plotting minstrels, each trying to outdo the last. Did you hear about the time Bjorn tried to tackle one of the trolls to impress the girls? They whisper, only to dissolve into giggles. These shared stories become your comfort, your bonds, until they start feeling like a history lesson, with a good dash of bedtime fright. You'll discover that the Viking tendency towards superstition is a force unto itself. Step outside the longhouse on a full moon to hear it all, whispered secrets, hungry trolls, and the occasional angry goat throwing shade because it's missing a bit of the maze it swore it wouldn't touch. Of course, you are warned that digging too deep into these tales of witchy legends is a slippery slope. Before long, you might start believing them. You might find yourself glancing over your shoulder when the fire crackles too loudly, or trying to dodge the shadows that seem to reach out from the dense forest nearby. You begin to realise that every creak and groan of the longhouse takes on a life of its own. Finally, just as you start to relax in this peculiar, cosy setting of overlapping stories and uncertainties, you'll meet the truth, a lullaby that strums through your consciousness. Perhaps in this harsh world, with its missing bathrooms and communal everything, these stories of heroes, trolls, and unfortunate sheep provide solace and laughter. They're a reminder that even Vikings need their moments of escape, woven in with magic and whimsy. A reason for camaraderie as you all huddle against the chill and uncertainty of life in the world outside. As you nestle further into your fur-lined bed, a part of you may start to wonder where you might fit into all this lore. Perhaps you'll become the next legendary warrior or laughingstock among the storytellers. Both sound equally appealing after a few Viking rounds. Either way, welcome to a night filled with laughter, chicken and gravy, and, you guessed it, lots of inspirational witch-like banter. Because what's a Viking's Longhouse without a touch of the fantastic? As you drift into the chaos of the evening, you start to comprehend that residing in a longhouse isn't just about survival. It's about camaraderie, absurdity, and realising you're probably better off somewhere else, like a professional shelter. Every evening brings new surprises and new neighbourly encounters, none of which you're equipped to handle, expecting a quiet night, not a chance. Tonight, a random cousin, who shouldn't have come out of your great-grandfather's shadow, decides to host an impromptu saga recital about the time he bravely chased off a bear. Spoiler alert. That bear didn't know it was chased off. It just found a more appetising lunch elsewhere. As the sun sets, the Longhouse transforms into a raucous hotspot of stories that range from ridiculous to totally improbable. You'll find yourself surrounded by family, who feels like extended family in a claustrophobic way, as tales are shared like high-stakes poker hands. Can you recount your own bear encounter? Good luck. The only bear you've seen is a drunken neighbour named Bjorn, who insists on performing a solo opera to his pet goat. Passers-by must wonder if the real bear is outside your door, or just Bjorn attempting a ballad after an afternoon ale binge. Your evening entertainment doesn't stop there. Enter Hilda, the village henpecker, who has made it her life's mission to share gossip as if it were her family heirloom. Hilda begins spinning wild tales of a distant dragon that supposedly snatched a few chickens from the neighbouring farm. I swear, she insists, it was 3 feet tall and had the voice of a banshee. You stare blankly, wondering if she might have mistaken the farmer's goat for a dragon during one of her infamous night walks. It's a Saturday night fever of absurdity and unfiltered imagination in the heart of Norse society. And now let's talk about the evening meal, not because it's appetising, but because it's mandatory. The aroma wafting through the air rivals the worst school cafeteria smell you can imagine. You begin to ponder whether twitching meat is a valid source of protein or just a rough representation of that poor animal's last moments before it became supper. If you're lucky, dinner will consist of last week's stew, generously heated over the fire until all the ingredients meld together into a creative blob of unforgettable flavours called mystery pottage. Did last week's stew include chicken, or was it something else? Who will have the courage to take the first bite? Perhaps this might be the night when the pot finally surrenders its secrets, or maybe you'll need to arm wrestle the contents just to find a clue. Now, when you think it can't get any more chaotic, in comes Eric, the resident bard wannabe, and by that we mean he can recite poems only after 3 tankards of ale. When sober, he is a bit of a downer, but once those measurements have fermented, goodness kick in, he transforms into the Longhouse entertainer. "Gather round," he bellows, toasting the air as if it were a powerful Viking god. He belts out a rendition of nonsense tales involving half-naked warriors and woolly mammoths, rampaging through town which suspiciously resemble every other previous song he's sung, but now they're louder and riddled with hiccups. As you look around, the only thing more entertaining than Eric's bizarre performances is the audience. You can't help but laugh as your neighbours try to look interested while managing the art of half-hearted cheers. The kids are rolling on the dirt floor, probably using tonight's ale-infused shenanigans as fodder for their analysis of what constitutes real Viking heroism. You find yourself torn. Do you join in and add to the mayhem? Or do you lean back and let the ridiculousness wash over you like your younger brother's daily bath avoidance? But it isn't all chaos without a bit of tradition. As the evening drags on and skies darken, you and your fellow inhabitants start the ritual war dance, not as skillful fighters, but as awkward family members trying not to trip over each other's feet. Every flailing arm is more a testament to your shared insanity than actual skill. It's less of a choreographed ballet and more of a series of unfortunate events with a soundtrack of angry goats. As you finally lie back down on your dingy fur encircled by your Viking brethren, you realise that while sleeping arrangements might feel like curling up in a pile of hay with a particularly judgmental chicken, there is a sense of community that forms the fabric of daily life here. Shared silly experiences, collective hardships, and unsanitary living conditions might not be what you signed up for, but it's undeniably the heart of Viking life. Raw, messy, and filled with laughter. Laughter meant to echo through the ages. Accidentally, of course, because no one's planning on cleaning it up.